One love to the humble, one love to the humble, one love to the humble. Grace and peace be multiplied unto you. Hey, look, I hope everybody been having a good week so far. Hope all is going well with you. And if it's not going well, I hope it all starts to turn around for you today and get better for you for the rest of the week. Now I got a video request from the good brother Trey Day. He always, hit me with some good requests. And if you have a request, be sure to put it in the comments below. I'll check it out and make a video on whatever you might be requesting. And it was somebody else that made a request, and I apologize to you because I looked for that. I think I know what it was on. I believe it was on Black Fatigue, but I can't remember who you were that asked me that. And I'll make the video, but I can't remember who you were, so I could tag you in it. I'm sorry about that. But I also want to apologize to the good brother Trey Day for taking so long with this video. This is the second time I've done this, taking too long. I apologize to you, man. But life be lifing. But hey, there's no excuse. No excuses, just producing. That's what I got to get back to. But hey, good brother Trey Day, thank you for this request. Um, so the request is basically from the 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s to present, like what was difference what was the difference in those eras? What did I notice being the difference in those eras? And I'm just gonna give you what I think my analysis of it, of what I saw and how things were, or at least at one point, at least my perception of how things were to where they have become today. And it is a big difference, you know what I mean? Because see, look, I grew up in the 80s, in the 90s, and then like closer to the 2000s is when I really became like in my 20s. So like the late 90s, I was a teenager. And then close to the 2000s is when I got like, when I was turning, I think I was like, no, it was the late 90s when I hit my 20s in the late 90s. So in the 2000s, I was like, you know, in my early 20s. But so let's go back though. In the 1980s, you know, it seemed like far as black people, because that's what this channel is all about, black people. Black people were a lot different during that time frame than now because see, 60s to the 80s, there wasn't that much time in between civil rights. Black people finally, not finally, but black people in a lot of places, still kind of high off that, still high off the movement that was going on in the 70s. You know, all the music that was coming along, the black and proud, like James Brown had, I'm black and I'm proud. That type of stuff. All the type of music was coming out during that time. A lot of great things was coming out. It had black people kind of like proud to be black, unified, and really really doing good for themselves, or at least trying to do good. In the 70s, it was going pretty strong. And you can go back and listen to the music because music shapes culture, right? Or culture shapes music, whichever one you want to call it. But that you listen to that music, that is the direct reflection of what was going on during that time. Any era you listen to the music, you can know what was happening during that time and how they was living. And then you go back and look at the pictures and look at the things that was going on during that time, you will see that the music reflects that. And also in the 70s, we had two parent households. You know what I'm saying? Most of the two parent, most of the households were two parent. Now there were some. It was beginning to start this whole one parent household, single mother households was starting, but at the time it still wasn't 100% like it is today. It was more that was common to have two parents in the household during that time, but that quickly changed. Right, we hit the 80s, and when the 80s hit, everything changed. It was a new era of situations, a new era of things happening in the 80s. Now I was very young in the 80s, but I watched what was going on around me. The music, rap wasn't even that old yet. Rap was at that time, rap was probably about 4 or 5 years old, if that, maybe. It wasn't still, it wasn't, it was looked at as a fad. It wasn't looked at as something that was gonna last. Like they was like, oh, it's just a fad, it'll fade out. That was the idea at the time. Nobody really knew what it was gonna be, but they knew it was different, and they didn't know what it was. They didn't know people didn't know what it was. It was this phenomenon of people rhyming words. Nobody really knew what it was. They didn't know how to perceive it or what to do with it or how to promote it. They just didn't know. It wasn't nothing like what you see today with a rap. It was nowhere near that. I mean, not even close. So, people like us around my age, or a little older, well, all older people, but those around my age and a little younger than me, we remember how we seen rap go from this stage of back then when it was just beginning to where it's at today. It's made some leaps and bounds, to be honest with you, and it went further than anybody would have ever thought. Nobody thought it was going to be anything like it is today. You could have never guessed that at that time. So the music was what it was. Then we get to the 80s, and then it became that's the crack era. The crack started hitting the scene in the 80s, and it tore all the way through the 80s, especially in the poor black communities. It was going on through there like wildfire. Everybody was getting hooked on it. It was drugs always been around, but black people wasn't really like drugs. There was not we wasn't like on the hard drugs. Black people, they might smoke some weed, drink, but we didn't do stuff like that. That wasn't a black thing. But when the crack came, they made it. I don't know. They just made it seem. I don't know how they got it to go, but they got it to go. Once you tried it once, you know, it was you was hooked on it forever. Well, not forever, but you was hooked on it, and it really did some damage to the community in a lot of ways because the people who was poor was selling it to other poor people just so they can make money and get rich. Because the conditions. And then you know how it was back then. People were like the drug dealers would give money to the hood. I mean, give food out to compensate for them destroying the same people at the same time. But it was kind of a double-edged sword. You burn a candle at two ends. At one end, you got the poor people who doing everything they can to get the crack. Then the other end, the poor people selling the crack. So you sell it to the poor people. The poor people sell it to other poor people to make money, and the poor people going to the crack dealer to get crack for they addiction. So it's a candle burning on both ends, and when a candle burns on both ends, it's no way to win. You can't put it out. It's going to keep going, and that's what it did. But on the music side, we had a lot of new artists came out in the 80s. Run DMC, Beastie Boys, KRS One, Kumo D, LL Cool J, all that was happening. It wasn't too violent. He talked a little trash doing what rappers do, but it wasn't too crazy. And I enjoyed the 80s era. You know what I'm saying? People were still rocking the afros. Black people were still rocking afros. Bell bottoms were still in because that was the 70s and 80s thing. It was slowly beginning to change, but not yet. Style was, black people's style was still style. You had breakdancing, that's an element of hip hop. Those of us who saw the true essence of hip hop, we know about the five elements of hip hop. We don't really talk about that too much in today's time, but back then that was a big deal. You couldn't bite people's style, what we call biting, meaning like if you got that style on, I can't have that same style you got. You couldn't wear the same thing or you couldn't do the same thing somebody else already did. So if somebody had a rhyming scheme, a rhyming skill, and they rhymed this way, you couldn't do that. You couldn't rhyme like them. You weren't allowed to. Like you wouldn't get no respect if you was doing what somebody else was doing. Today, everybody seems to do the same thing somebody else is doing. That's just the way it goes. But back then, you couldn't do that. You couldn't even you barely could wear the same clothes somebody else had. You better had not known they had it, and you just had better just been by coincidence that you had it on when they had it on. You couldn't wear the same stuff somebody else was wearing. You know what I'm saying? That just didn't it just didn't go like that. So those times were very different than today also. And the 80s were about unity. You know what I'm saying? That was back when NOI was very, very strong and everybody knew who they were. I'm sure they know now, but you just don't hear about them the way you used to back then. Um, Malcolm X. People were sampling Malcolm X in their music. That was a sign of the times, right? Because we was really on that type of stuff back then. And then you further you get into the '80s, the Rakim came out with the rap. He changed the whole game because it was not nobody ever heard anybody rhyme like that at that time. That's why they call him like the God MC because nobody else was doing what he was doing at that time. It was the first time. Now y'all here today, y'all don't think nothing of it, but for us who first time hearing this kind of stuff, it was a mind blowing. It seemed like nothing now. It seemed like so basic now, but you got to think about the time. No one had ever did that. Like if somebody came out today and started rhyming in a way that nobody had ever heard before, it would be mind blowing. But you can't duplicate that again because it's already been done at a level so high that I don't think nobody could come and top that. Like the way Michael Jordan changed the NBA in the 80s. He joined the NBA in the 80s. He changed the way the game was played. Nobody was playing basketball like that prior to him. Even though you had Magic Johnson that was already out there, Kareem, Larry Bird. I mean, you had a list of great athletes, but nobody was playing the game on that level that he was playing on. So he changed the whole game. Nobody's watching basketball like that. People that don't even know basketball know who Michael Jordan is. He's a worldwide icon, right? No matter where he goes on the planet, he's gonna be known. And he just changed the game. He made people. Michael Jordan was filling stadiums at other people's stadiums, like away games. The away team would have sold out tickets because Michael Jordan coming to play their team, and when their team wasn't playing no more, they wasn't selling out. But he's the whole reason why everybody can make the money they make today because he took the league to a level that made it globalized it and made it around the world, which other people wasn't doing that before him. I know I went on a long tangent about Mike, but Mike is another level, right? But during the '80s, the crack era was destroying the black community. It was destroying the family unit. You know what I'm saying? Now the unit is falling apart because of crack. People who was doing well, they're not doing well no more. Or if you was already in poverty, now you really lower than that because that crack has got a hold of you. It was bad. Families is torn apart. People dying. The drug game was on another level. They was taking people out of here like there's no tomorrow. But I still like the '80s. Now moving into the '90s, now this is when I was getting older and really starting to understand life a little bit more in the '90s. Now the drug game was still strong in the '90s. It hadn't went nowhere. People still making a lot of money in the '90s off of the '80s crack. They call it the '80s crack era because that's when it started. But it went all the way through the '80s and then all the way through the '90s as well. It didn't stop in the '90s. It was still going strong, just as strong as it was in the '80s. Now you got black people are more, at least on my level, the people that was around my age, we was more unified. We was all about being together. We was all about unity. You know what I'm saying? We always had beef. I mean, beef is beef. You from this neighborhood, they from that neighborhood, but we just fight. We not gonna pull out no guns and start shooting. We gonna just fight it out. We might get black eye, busted nose. You might get a broken bone. You might get beat up real bad, but you don't. We didn't take each other out. Not over no fist fight. Not over no beef. That wasn't the way it was. To back then, you didn't get respect because you could shoot. People might have feared you, but they didn't respect you. Respect came from putting them hands up. You want some real respect? You had to put your hands up and show what your hands was about. Nobody cared about shooters because it wasn't really common, at least where I was at, it wasn't a common thing to just be ready to shoot right out the rip. Not that people didn't shoot, but that scary people, we thought they were scary. You know what I'm saying? Because we was throwing hands. That's what you got respect off of your hands. Can you throw these hands? That's where your respect came from, not from how many people you can shoot. You weren't gonna get nothing off of that. Yeah, you get some fear. People would be fearful of you, but they wouldn't respect you. Big difference. But by this time, the family unit is really falling apart in the '90s. Like it's really a lot of Lot of single mother homes at this point. It has went from a high percentage of having two parents in the household to a very low percentage at this point. And it was very different from the '80s because we still was tight, we still was unified, but now we listen to the music, we getting more stylish, and we getting more we coming up, and we just getting more stronger. Even though we went through the crack era, even though it tore a hole in the community, we still was upbeat. We still had music, and we still had morals, and we still had character, and we still had things that we respected. Now, there's a lot of Christian values that was out there at that time that even if you wasn't a Christian, you still gave respect to people who were. You still had your morals. Your parents may not have been Christian, but they still taught you morals and respect. You respected authority. You respected adults. You respected the elders. You didn't just act a fool. You didn't be disrespectful at all. I don't care what your practice was. I don't care what you believed in. That right there was instilled during that time. And you better not let somebody else parent saw you doing something and they tell your parent. You getting it. You lucky if the parent that caught you didn't do it. Because everybody was getting everybody. It didn't matter. If you lived in the neighborhood, everybody's parents was your parents. It wasn't just their parents, it was everybody's parents was your parents. And all the parents was cool and on the same page. These days, I don't think people know who their next door neighbor is anymore. Back then, you could do nothing. And you better be real good at hiding because somebody gonna see it and they're gonna tell if they don't get their hands on you first. If they get their hands on you first, then they're gonna deal with you. And then when you go home, they're gonna tell your parents, and then you gonna get done again. I remember a clear situation of myself. Me personally. Um, I had my car. My dad got me a car, and one of my friends came to the house. He was riding a 4-wheeler, so he wanted me to go to the store to get some gas for his 4-wheeler because he didn't want to drive it on the street. So we driving out of our neighborhood, and he playing around, I'm playing around, and one time I thought he was still playing, but actually what happened was the 4-wheeler cut off. So I hit him. I thought he was just playing. I thought he was gonna take off. So I was gonna speed up real fast, get up close to him, and then as soon as I get close, he usually pull off. So I thought that's what he was doing. But this ain't what he was doing. It was actually off. And I hit him. And I put a dent in my hood. And at that point, I was like, I'm not going to the store. Because I'm pissed now, right? I get home. Somebody already told that happened. I'm like, and everything I did during that time, somebody would tell on me. And he would always know. And I'm like, how in the world he always knew what I was doing? Well, he knew because everybody around the way was telling. So that ain't happening no more. I don't think kids today get that same type of love. They call it like abuse or they call it all these other things, but that was love. People looking out for you and tightening you up when you out of line. But see, you can't tell nobody kids nothing no more, or you got to fight the parents almost because of you trying to correct their child or whatever the case may be. So those days are gone. That's a difference right there. That's why you see a lot of wild stuff going on today that probably wouldn't happen back then. Was it wild stuff happening back then? Yes, it was. But I'm not trying to say it was 100% perfect. But I'm saying for the most part, people had morals and they was given values regardless of their beliefs. Regardless of their beliefs, they was given morals and values. And you had to follow that. If the cops pull you over, you did not act a fool. Just comply and get on about your way. There's no need to sit there and argue with them. You don't argue with a police officer in their domain. Their domain is on the road. Arguing with them right there is gonna get you in a lot of bad situation. Right? You fight that battle in the courtroom. You don't fight it on the street. You will lose every time. But anyway, so that's the '90s. Now we started getting into the 2000s. The rap music started to change because we was on that conscious rap in the '90s. We didn't really have too much gangster rap like until um, Dr. Dre and them came out from the West Coast. They brought the that type of rap to the game, and we that was new. Everybody was excited about it. It was something new. Nobody never heard nothing like that before. They were pioneers to their style, and so nobody had ever heard anything like what they were doing before. So they gravitated to it, and it was the beginning of what we see today with this rap. And now, even though Tupac was out in the '90s, he wasn't doing that type of rap. Like he wasn't the hardcore Tupac that he became. He was more like conscious rap. I mean, he would talk about uh, jail and killing and all that, but he talked about it in a more conscious way. You know what I'm saying? That's why people was like really listening to him. Even though he always talked about gangster stuff, but that was his main character at the time. He was more like conscious type of dude. But then, of course, when he made the movie Juice in the '90s, he made Juice, and his character, everybody fell in love with that character, and that's who his persona became after that. Now, those who was around, they know what I'm talking about. Tupac he was one way, and then he made Juice, and the character he played in Juice, he played so good that he kept that persona. That's the persona that became Machiavelli, and that's who produced all them songs that he produced, all the gangster crazy that he was talking. But if you listen to the other songs, you can see where he was. That's really Tupac. Like songs like Changes, songs like uh what's this Changes, um Pain, things like them songs like that. That's Tupac at his best. But them other songs like Gangsta Party and all of the stuff he was doing, that was the persona. So he mixed the two together and it worked for him. But that wasn't his true persona. Was not about the gangster stuff. So that was the '90s, and I hope I'm touching on this decent. I hope I am. I always feel like I'm missing out on something, or I was thinking something I should have said after the video was over. And I didn't want to write nothing down because I want this to be authentic and genuine. Um, but rap in the '90s and life in the '90s was the greatest for me. That time was when, like, growing up during that time, '80s and '90s. You get up in the morning on a Saturday morning, you had your routine. Uh, I used to eat Frosted Flakes, they were my favorite, or Rice Krispies. Eating Frosted Flakes, Rice Krispies, and then watching cartoons. Watching Looney Tunes. You know what I mean? They just come on at like 11, stay up for about an hour, and then Soul Train used to come on. Now, so everybody wanted to see Soul Train with Don Cornelius because he would bring up all the newest talent, singers, people like that would get on Soul Train, and the dancers used to be dancing. It was just exciting to watch. Listen to the music that they had, because back then wasn't a lot of places for black people to be on TV. Not like now. They only had MTV, and MTV didn't really play a lot of rap. So you had to catch Soul Train or catch it on the radio or something like that. That was pretty much the only way you was gonna hear it, and it wasn't gonna be no videos. It wasn't until BET came out. Well, Bob Johnson had BET, a black man had BET before he sold it, whatever. But he the one who started BET, and BET gave a platform for black artists. Now you had some talk shows like Arsenio Hall, who used to let black artists come on there and perform, but it wasn't a lot of places. So then you had, let me go back. Groups like Run DMC broke down a lot of barriers and opened a lot of doors for black artists. Believe it or not, they the ones who like created the crossover for the black rapper to appeal to the white audience. Because back then it wasn't they wasn't selling platinum. It wasn't going platinum back then. They wasn't even going gold because black people don't buy rap music. Black people don't buy music. That's not true. Black people do. I mean, that's true, but what I'm saying is black people, a black artist could not make it without a white audience buying the music. So they had to figure out a way to cross it over so that white people would get interested in it and start buying it. Because the black audience ain't gonna do it. You know, them artists was barely going gold back then. And gold is a big deal back then, unlike it is today, because now everybody going platinum. But that's only because of the white audience. Because they were still in the same situation with just black audiences. Mm-mm. Black people don't buy music like that. We listen to it, but we don't buy it like that. Even to this day, we don't buy it like that. I mean, we're only 13% of the population, and out of 13%, how many of them you think you can actually buy, listen to rap music? Not enough to see any type of significant money. So, excuse me, y'all. Every time I get this camera, I start getting like my nose, like I want to sneeze. I don't know what it is. It happens almost every time. But but that was the way it was back then for us in music. Black artists, you had to appeal to the white people in order for you to succeed. But now it's common, you know, it's common now. And now black people do shows, and some black people come to the show, but the real money is when they can get a white audience, you know, a predominantly white audience in the show. And that was a big deal in the 90s. Most people still wasn't going platinum in the 90s because of that reason. But for me, the reason why I like the 90s so much is because of the birth of the new type of music. That was the golden era of hip hop. The 90s was just the golden era. That's when like all the new styles came out, all the new, you know, personalities, all the new ways that people were doing it. Everybody had their own style. It wasn't nobody biting nobody's style. It was like their own style. And it was a beautiful time. We all was getting along. Black people finally coming to this place where we can kind of like get along, and even with everybody, you know, not just ourselves, but black and white was kind of like doing okay. I'm not saying we was doing the best, but we was doing okay. And then you get to the 2000s, and music was still going good, but it was taking a turn. I think the sales were starting to drop, and people were not buying it, you know, as much as they used to because of the way it was going. And now you full fledged into gangster now, and that had destroyed the community in so many different ways because of how it made people act and want to become a certain kind of way. And people say, "Well, it's just music." No, it's not just music. It's never just music. You know what I'm saying? Music has a way of moving people and controlling people. So if you say it's just music, you're absolutely wrong. But that was part of it. Let's see what else. Um, Man, I apologize, y'all. I'm sorry I'm doing this, but I'm not gonna be able to make this video over again. I'm speaking straight out of my dome, so I'm not gonna. I'm happy to go with it, and I apologize to you for all that I'm doing, but I can't help it. Um, the '90s was a great time. The 2000s was okay. Early 2000s was great as well, but somewhere around like 2010, 11, 12, and up until now, it just went off the rails. I don't know what we're doing today. I don't have a clue what we're doing today. We got identity politics. We got so many black people acting the fool. We got white people acting the fool. Black and white people don't get along. It's like we got all this new introduce all this new stuff in. Gender wars. I mean, it's absolutely crazy right now. I don't even understand what's going on. But people who wasn't old enough or wasn't alive back then will swear up and down that it was harder back then than it is today. And I'm here to tell you, it's not. It's not. It wasn't. People were doing just fine. Everything was peaceful and quiet for the most part. But nowadays, people acting like they have no sense at all. And what do you do when people don't have no sense?